Did you know that it's possible to manifest a change in how you experience someone? Maybe your boss is difficult, or maybe your significant other or a specific person has become distant. Perhaps your child seems unmotivated, or maybe someone you just really care about keeps showing up in ways that you just don't like. And you're wondering, can I use the law of assumption or manifestation to change this? Can I experience a different version of this person? Today, I want to talk about how our assumptions about other people and ourselves influence the version of them that we experience, and also a manifestation technique that you can start using immediately to experience a different version of them. I'm using my words carefully because the goal isn't to control people. The goal is to stop reinforcing the version of them that you no longer want to experience. But before we dive in, welcome back to Manifesting with Mandy, where we discuss the manifestation principles and techniques to consciously create the life that we desire. Now, I want you to think about a pair of glasses. Every assumption that you hold acts as a lens. Once you're looking through that lens, you begin interpreting everything through it. So if the lens is a fear of abandonment or rejection, suddenly everything becomes evidence. A delayed text means something bad, a short response means something negative, a busy week is proof. In psychology, this is called confirmation bias. So we naturally notice and remember information that supports what we already believe. The law of assumption describes something very similar. We tend to experience life through the state that we're occupying. So the assumptions that we repeatedly return to, the stories that we're constantly telling ourselves, and those assumptions shape our experience of people. One of the most common situations I see goes something like this. My partner was so loving in the beginning, but then they just became so distant. And of course, there can be so many reasons why relationships change. But I also think something else happens here. Fear begins to creep in, insecurities begin creeping in, comparison, projection of situations. The inner conversation then becomes, well, maybe they're losing interest, maybe I'm not good enough. And if those thoughts are repeated enough, they become assumptions. And those assumptions become the lens that we view the relationship through. It becomes our 3D reality. So eventually we may stop seeing the person clearly and start seeing our own story about them. That's why it's so important to become aware of the assumptions that we're holding. When it comes to the law of assumption, you'll often hear the phrase, everyone is you pushed out. Some people interpret that to mean that everyone is a puppet. I interpret it to mean that people reflect the assumptions and the expectations, the beliefs, and the identities that we consistently assign to them. So if you continually think my coworkers are always impossible, my friend is so selfish, my partner doesn't really care about me or prioritize me, that is the version that you are repeatedly relating to. You also hold beliefs about relationships or work in general. So if you believe that, relationships are hard, or that relationships have a honeymoon phase and then things turn sour, the people in your life will play their role to conform to your beliefs. I had a friend that had the worst opinion of men. She'd say things like, these men, they're so trifling, they deserve nothing. But she was also dating and desiring a loving, committed relationship with a man. So what do you think happened? Because of her belief that men were trifling, she would consistently run into men that confirmed her belief, even if things started out perfectly with someone. Sure enough, over time, something would happen where the guy would conform to that belief, which made her believe even more that all men were trifling. You see how this becomes a never-ending cycle? Now, here's another very important angle. People will also confirm your beliefs about yourself. So if deep down you don't believe that it's possible for someone to love you the way that you want to be loved, your experience and the people in it will confirm this. If you believe that you have bad luck in love or in your career, the people in your life will show up and confirm this. Because according to the law of assumption, what we consistently assume is always reflected back into our experience. This is why I always tell people, do not speak to someone that you're interested in when you're feeling anxious or insecure, because they will absolutely reflect how you feel in that moment. One of my most favorite examples of this comes from one of Neville Goddard's books, either The Law and the Promise or The Power of Awareness. I'll figure it out and then put it here somewhere. But there was this costume designer that was having ongoing problems with the producer that she worked for. So she felt that he was really unfair and overcritical and rude. And no matter how hard she worked, it just seemed like he always found something wrong with what she did. And she admitted that every single day on her way to work, she would mentally argue with this man, replay old interactions, and mentally tell him exactly what she thought about him in ways that she would never say out loud. So Neville pointed out that she was rehearsing conflicts every single day. She was carrying around a version of this man in her imagination and interacting with that version constantly. So in other words, she was continuously reinforcing an assumption about him, that he was rude and critical and unfair. So Neville suggested that instead of mentally arguing with him, she should imagine pleasant conversations. So she imagined him congratulating her on her designs and praising her work. She imagined thanking him for his kindness and encouragement, and she repeated these new mental conversations before bed, on her way to work, and throughout the day whenever she had a thought about him. So over time, his behavior began to change. The criticism faded, the relationship improved, and his attitude toward her became much warmer. How many of us are doing the same exact thing that this woman did? How many times have you argued with a friend, a coworker, a boss, a relative, or a significant other before we've even seen them? Replaying old conversations, anticipating conflict, thinking about what you should have said during an argument, and before you know it, you keep reinforcing the exact version of them that you no longer want to experience. So the costume designer's breakthrough was that she changed the version of him she was consistently relating to in her mind. Now, if this is hard to perceive, here's another perspective that has always been extremely helpful for me personally. There is a concept in quantum physics known as the many worlds theory. So the simplified version of this is that every possible outcome already exists in a separate parallel reality. Now, that's a much bigger concept that I'll cover in another video, but what I find useful about this framework is that it changes the question. So instead of asking, how do I get this person to change, you begin asking, which version of this person am I choosing to relate to? If every version of that person exists, the unloving and the loving, you're just shifting your thoughts to align with the reality where they're more loving or more kind or whatever it is that you desire. So with this theory, the application is the same. You stop treating the current version of this person as the only version available, because you cannot continuously relate to someone as one version while expecting and hoping to experience another. So how do we begin to shift our assumptions about someone? One of my most favorite techniques is actually really simple. You create a gratitude or appreciation list. So every day, write down everything you can think of that you appreciate about that person. Create a running list of any positive thing that comes to mind, even if it's like an old memory. The purpose isn't to lie to yourself. The purpose is to train your focus and to stop rehearsing what's wrong. So you can revisit and reread this list whenever you need a reminder of the version of them that you prefer to experience. Now, visualization is more your thing. You can visualize a short scene where they behave or say something that reflects the version of them that you want to experience. You can also use the whisper method. In the whisper method, you get into a meditative state and then you imagine yourself walking up to the person and whispering in their ear whatever it is that you desire from them. I found that this works better when it's from a state of love and gratitude. So like whispering, thank you for being so kind and loving to me. So back to the original question, yes, you can manifest a change in someone else. You just start by changing the assumptions, the beliefs, and the thoughts that you have about them and yourself. Become aware of the lens that you are looking through, the story that you're repeating, and the version of them that you are continually identifying with and returning to. Because we experience the version of people that we consistently expect to encounter. So let me me know in the comments, have you ever seen a change in someone's behavior after you changed the way that you view them, either for better or for worse? And if you've enjoyed this video or found it helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos on manifesting your dream life. I will see you in the next one.